Hello all, welcome to chapter 19 from the book of 2 Samuel. In the beginning of this chapter, we see David mourned and wept for Absalom. David's supporters therefore mourned in spite of their victory in battle. The supporters returned to the city quietly, as though they were ashamed after fleeing in battle. Joab therefore confronts and rebukes David. Joab says that David's mourning had disgraced his supporters who saved his life. Joab says that it looked like David would be more happy if Absalom lived and his supporters were dead. Joab appeals to David to encourage and congratulate his troops, or not a single one of them would support David. So the king got up and sat in the city gate, and his supporters came into the king's presence. We then see the tribes of Israel debate on whether to receive David back as king. David then sends Zadok and Abiathar the priests as negotiators. David instructs the priests to tell the tribe leaders that they were David's relatives and they should not reject him as king. David also sends a message to Amasa saying that he will be the commander of the army in place of Joab. The tribes were therefore convinced and accepted David as king. We then see, after becoming king, Shimei comes to David and asks for forgiveness. But Abishai says to David that Shimei should be killed for cursing the king. David, however, forgives Shimei and spares him. We then see Mephibosheth comes to meet David. David questions him as to why did he not show support towards David. Mephibosheth says that his servant Ziba betrayed him and lied to David, saying that Mephibosheth had turned against David. He leaves the decision on David. David says that the land was to be divided between Ziba and Mephibosheth. We then see Barzillai was a rich man who provided David and his people with supplies in Mahanaim. David shows appreciation to Barzillai and offers him to come to Jerusalem with David. Barzillai says that he was 80-year-old man and did not want to be a burden to David. Barzillai instead sends Kimham with David to Jerusalem. Towards the end of this chapter, we see when David was coming to Jerusalem, all the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel escorted David. All the men of Israel came complaining to the king. They complained, saying that the men of Judah did not give them honor of helping David and his people to cross the Jordan. The men of Judah answered and said that they did this because the king is closely related to them. In response, the men of Israel said that there are 10 tribes in Israel, and this gives them 10 times more right to the king. The argument continued, but the words of the men of Judah were harsher than those of the men of Israel. This is how the chapter ends. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Until next time, may God bless us all. Bye-bye.